Hey, business owners, welcome to this episode of Futurise Your Business interview series. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of having Peter White. Peter White is the Managing Director of the FBAA. FBAA, for those who don't know, is the Professional Association for Finance and Mortgage Brokers in Australia. Peter, big welcome.
Thanks so much for having us. Great to be a part of the show. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic, Peter. No doubt some busy times for you in the last few months.
Yeah, if times aren't busy enough without what we've been through over the last 3 months. But yeah, it certainly has been. But it's been good through a difficult time, if I can put it that way.
Fantastic. Peter, one thing I'd like you to do as we start is to tell our audience a bit about the FBAA.
Sure. So the Finance Brokers Association, or the FBAA, has been going since 1993. It represents about 8,500 mortgage and finance brokers around Australia. So it's a national industry body. It's a not-for-profit membership-based organisation. We're heavily focused in lobbying government, education, and providing value-added services, for the sake of a better term, to our members around the country. But although that's our membership, we have a much broader conversation in the marketplace that cuts across the whole industry. We are quite renowned in different circles for those conversations that, although it's relevant to our members, but it's relevant to an entire industry. That's a quick snapshot of the FBAA.
Thank you, Peter. Really appreciate it, because I was keen that our audience got to know a bit more about the FBAA, because I know there's a lot of work that happens as part of your organization, which is a very high-profile organization or a high-profile industry in this country. As the managing director of the FBAA, what are the biggest issues you are seeing that your members are facing during these times with COVID and all what's happening?
I think that biggest issue is something that we've been, well, I know I have been anyhow since 2006, working on since 2016, but it's almost like a pop of a bubble at this point in time. And that's taking care of people's mental wellness and their mental health. It's one of those things. We have an industry that's used to working from home. That part of the equation is actually pretty easy at our gig, but we're also used to getting together with each other. So whether it's through professional development days, coffee meetings, conferences and things like that, there's a very instant disconnection there. And we are an industry that's 72% male dominated. And so historically, we never talked about mental health issues and people having difficulties with depression or anxieties and so on. And I actually started that conversation for our industry in 2016 as the Mental Health Awareness Ambassador. Today, it's a commonplace conversation, which I'm very, very pleased and thankful for. But during these periods, there's been a lot of additional stresses put on people because of that physical distancing and isolation that's incurred. And that's been difficult for a lot of people. But as the restrictions start to ease off, that actually has not been such it's starting to ease at this point in time. Because in one respect, it's been some of the busiest time for brokers in Australia working at the moment. But with that isolation component, together with the challenges with some of the lending changes that have happened through here, there's been a lot of frustrations and a lot of difficulties that people have had to work through with their borrowers and their clients. There's been delays in processing, for example, because a lot of the lenders had their processing systems offshore, and also they shut down and stopped. And then they're going, it's taking 40 days to actually look at a loan file, not get a decision, to actually pick it up off the desk. Terrible. And then in that period of time, the credit policies also changed.
Yes.
So by the time they get to pick it up, they go, well, we used to do that, but we don't do that anymore, or it now looks like this. So it's terribly frustrating and really frustrating for the borrowers. I mean, you've got to remember every one of our members is a small business person. So they understand the pains and anxieties and the challenges within small business. A lot of their clients are small business people. And so you're trying to balance all these things. And that's probably been the greatest difficulty. And I am pleased to say we are starting to navigate out the other side of that.
Fantastic. As you correctly say, the mortgage brokers are often like the meat in the sandwich, right? They are trying to deliver services, especially during these times where their customers are hurting and going through various emotions. And then, as you mentioned, when the banks are also not working in the same way they were working, or they are inundated with requests, which, the banks are also beyond capacity. I know even the Prime Minister had made a few comments with regard to that. So I can understand some of the issues that your members faced, and you quite rightly say that you started this mental health focus in 2016, and I'm proud you've done that, because very few organizations had started that conversation. And if you had already started that by 2020, now things have taken momentum, and as you said, it's become a good conversation and a common conversation that people are having. So again, congratulations on that, Peter. A big supporter of well-being of people, and I'm delighted to hear that. So fantastic, Peter. I know not just this year. This year we have COVID, everybody's impacted. But last year was a huge year for your industry. We had the Royal Commission. And I think you, in your capacity as a managing director, had a lot of work to do with the FBAA. And if I'm not wrong, you were able to dodge a few bullets through the hard work the FBAA and yourself personally did. Are you able to give us some insights onto that, please?
It unquestionably was a unique period in time. And I've been around 42 years and then some in this industry. And it was unlike anything, I've got to say, I've had to face in the past. The background to it is it's actually started back in December of 2015. So we had this enormous build-up, and then all of a sudden we hit this Royal Commission. In December 2015, the then Federal Minister, Kelly O'Dwyer, turned around and said she was going to do an investigation into mortgage brokers' remuneration. So, great. So she directed ASIC to do that. They researched it through 2016. In 2017, they released a paper, which the report was called Report 516, into brokers' remuneration. And it really didn't come up with a lot, but it also didn't finish all the conversations. So as we're dealing with government saying, so where does this go? We're now going to have a Royal Commission. So then the Royal Commission started to kick in with its investigations in 2018, and nothing was done there. So we're getting this thing building, the pressure pot's building. And then eventually, of course, we had the Royal Commission in 2019, and the 4th of February, the announcements were made, and I was in lockup in Canberra at the time. And I must admit, I came out of there pretty angry. Out of all the conversations we'd had in the lead up to this, whether it be through the Productivity Commission, whether it be federal ministers and regulators and so on, and all the work industry was doing over and above the lobbying issues. I'm a lobbyist in my own right, so I spent a fair bit of time down there. You think, well, I'm getting somewhere on this, and you come out the other end, and all the experts, the lawyers that we had behind us who have represented people at Royal Commissions since this country's ever had them, except for this past one, because we're now their client. We weren't directly in the scope of that as an industry body. But all the experts are saying, look, there's going to be further conversations on mortgage brokers. There's nothing going to be too prescriptive. And of course, we come out the end of that day and there's some real prescriptive measures sitting in there. And we sit back and say, well, how did you come up with this? Because the reality is, a lot of people say, well, brokers get a commission for selling loans. That must cost me the borrower money. No, it doesn't. If you go to a broker and it's 4% through broker, you go to the bank, it's 4% through the bank. It's a cost of distribution. Now, small business owners would understand that. It's just, do I distribute this way or do I distribute that way? Yes. It's still a cost. And in our case, it has no impact on the retail value, being the interest rate borrowers charge. So it's actually a zero cost to borrowers. And if banks and lenders didn't use brokers, they would just pocket the margin or have to funnel that into more branch networks. Yes. So, there were radio commentators during that time go, you're ripping clients off, you're getting paid commission. If you weren't there, interest rates would be lower. And how do you work that out? Not even close. One, the bank, they're going to pocket it first, so it's a bank, But secondly, they're going to have to create another distribution line. So that means more branch networks, which is more expensive. So it actually would have pushed rates up. So because of the amount of time I normally spend in Canberra, I sat there basically for a week through that period with insurmountable amount of interviews and media and radio pieces. And I think we're across, it was over 500 or 600 different media pieces within a 48-hour period So it's constantly in front of cameras, and there's obviously syndication pieces involved in that as well, but whether it be radio, TV, and then speaking with government and saying, yeah, you have fundamentally got this wrong. You are now, because one of the big things that they came out and said, we're going to change the commission model, right? So they weren't saying brokers can't get paid a commission. We have this piece where you get a little bit now and the rest over a period of time, right? But you're technically owed the whole lot, right? But to manage the cash flows and to keep interest rates down, this was agreement many, many years ago. So what they said now is we're going to make all that one big lump sum again. I go, wait a second. Back 12 years ago, we all agreed that was a bad outcome because the only way banks could manage that is to increase interest rates because it's going to cost them more in the initial stages. So like I say, every home borrower in this country is going to have an interest rate rise because of your decision. So we spent, again, a lot of time sitting in federal ministers and officers up to the top, going through all this again and again and again. Eventually, we saw government come back and say they're going to leave broker remuneration as is. And there's other things we're finishing. I sitting in a House of Reps Economics Standing Committee later this month that is looking at the progress on the other things within the recommendations of the Royal Commission. But it was a period of probably 5-6 months of unlike any other part in history. And but where it landed wasn't because we pushed for something that shouldn't be. This was all because it was the way it is the right way for it to be.
Yes.
This was all for all the right reasons. It wasn't like we're trying to force our way because we wanted it this way because there was a commercial advantage. No, this is the best outcome for home loan borrowers right across the country. And of course, a lot of small business people are leveraging debt off their home. It would have impacted them as well. And then, there was the potential risk of collapsing some lenders. Some smaller banks like ME Bank, so the non-majors, they don't have branch networks, and 70+% of their mortgages come through brokers. So they would have no distribution, nor do they have the capital adequacy to build a massive branch network. So you would have collapsed and reduced competition in the market.
Absolutely.
So, that was the Royal Commission. Great fun, and it's still not over. We're still working on it today.
Peter, some great work was certainly done in the way you even articulated it to us, right? Because look, I, as a user of your service, I can tell you, I used to work directly with the bank when it came to my lending. Then I started, I don't know how, working with a mortgage broker. And I don't think I will change that relationship because I find it as a customer a so much better way to go through things. I get an independent opinion, and I always get updates because the mortgage broker wants to look after my interests because I'm his customer. Often I didn't feel that when I was working with a bank directly because they are big places and I'm just a number for them, right? So, this is the importance of industry associations. A lot of people don't see the value of paying that professional fee sometimes, but this is the work that was done in articulating and delivering that message you just gave us to the higher authorities, to the policy makers, and in making sure legislation is done in the right way is why we have industry associations. And so again, congratulations to you and the FBAA, and thank you for articulating that to us so very clearly. Thank you. Peter, I was going to ask, my next question was to tell us these tangible and intangible benefits of being a member. Why should somebody be a member? But I think you've answered that question.
I possibly have, but it's a very valid point. I mean, I have been involved with the FBAA since 2003. I was a volunteer back then as New South Wales State President, and in 2018 I was elected to be National President and Chairman of the Board, and then I took over the role as CEO. So it's hard to find people to work in not-for-profits. So I took over as CEO, and hence I've stayed in these days Managing Director. But the question is, why do I pay you a fee is a common one in professional services. And over the last couple of years, but our members know exactly why they pay a fee, and how cheap it is in the grand scheme of things when they've been through things like royal commissions. Because I started working with government and regulators as a part of my role within the association back in 2008 when I took over the national presidency and chairmanship. It's the long-term relationships that we built with different politicians, different regulators, and even though they move around, you are a known entity. You're no longer a, so who are you, sort of thing. And it paid us a huge dividends. I mean, everybody in our industry rallied together and played their part. And there's no discounting any of that. But the rally was we actually could have another conversation again over and above where they thought they should land on things and bring reasonableness to that conversation and understanding that says, okay, yeah, probably shot that bullet too far the wrong direction. Let's swing it back here and land that pace. But it's the policy and the decisions of government that influence how we can conduct business in our country. And if they're not right, then everybody loses. Because we know, that small business is the backbone of the country. So you erode and destroy that, the impact is phenomenal. So there are a whole host of other things we do for them as well. We've been in that mental health space and so on. But we hopefully, we know and we get they share the love with us. They very much appreciate the work we do.
Thank you, Peter. I know there's lots of educational work that also happens, professional education work that happens for all the tiers of membership, I think, right? I know there are multiple tiers of membership in any industry association, depending on what the member's business is, and I'm aware of that, so which is fabulous. And I know our organization also has done some work with FBAA initially in that knowledge development area. Peter, with COVID, the world as we know it has changed forever. And as we all know, it's time for all of us to start making shifts. In fact, the Prime Minister said this when the JobKeeper program was launched on the 29th of March. He said every business must rethink their business model. What he means is that we have to reinvent ourselves as business people, as business owners. One of the biggest issues that we see now is in Australia, we have about 2.3 million small businesses. Over 86% of these businesses are impacted by digital disruption and are unable, they struggle to engage consumers using digital means. They have invested in websites and social media, and they invest a lot on advertising. And when they don't get results, it's frustrating. Because however, consumers are super savvy, right? How important do you think is this digital area of digital empowerment for your industry and your members, the way you see it?
It's critically important. And I guess we're quite fortunate. There's very few brokers in Australia that don't have a website, for example, that don't have some form of digital capability dealing with inquiries or applications. We've been fairly progressive in that point. There's still some that don't, but they're in the vast minority. But we still have challenges. And one of the benefits in the storm, if you like, if there can be one, it's actually forced other areas in our industry that have been dragging the chain on digital enhancements to actually step up to the plate. So, in the past, doing what we call a verification of identity through a screen like we are at the moment was taboo. Now it's commonplace. Meeting clients at their home was a normal thing. I established, you've probably heard of the company Rams Home Loans.
Yes.
I established its first sales office in 1993. Sorry, I started to age me a bit, didn't it? But, everything was face-to-face. And that has what shaped the future to the recent past. Whereas now, this is a commonplace way to meet with a potential borrower. It's not the only way, but it is the commonplace way. And it was a need a little while ago, but that's loosening up a bit. But these are things that are creating the new normal as we go forward. There are still areas within our industry that the COVID period, I think, will reshape some of that future again in regards to standardization of forms. So every bank and lender has a different Privacy Act form, different application form, discharge mortgage forms, you name it. Everyone's got their legal people justifying their existence and fees because they're all a little bit different. But all of a sudden these things, after probably 20 years of pushing, are starting to come together, and as we come out, we'll create a new way of conducting business that will be far more efficient. One thing in our industry it doesn't do, it doesn't take away that personal interaction.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if it's through a screen, but we have a few companies in our sector that do all their lending online, but they all have people you can speak to when you want to. So I think we're a couple of generations away from removing the individual. But there are certainly some benefits. There are some innovations and progressions and some new normals that come out the back of this that benefits everybody. Stepping up to the plate and stop. And I was recently in our industry media by saying, stop dealing with your petty differences, get over it, move on. Let's get these standardizations of form happening. Let's cut across everyone that verification of identification when you're doing a loan application is fine through the screen. There's ways of doing it that tick all the boxes. So it's certainly making areas within our industry progress. And as I said, the vast majority of mortgage brokers are working in a digital environment. So they submit their loans digitally. So there's a natural play.
Yes.
Yeah. So critically important.
Thank you, Peter. And you make a really good point there, right? There's a lot of areas of improvement from an efficiency perspective. That's that operational excellence perspective that we need to work towards. And that's a process of continually striving for that. But also, as you correctly said, mortgage brokers are used to working online because that's how they submit the applications, etc. One area I feel, there are a couple of areas that I kind of feel they still need assistance or need to rethink is, I think there are a lot, as you know, in any industry, competition is very significant, very high. And there are a lot of individual operators or small-sized operators in the marketplace. And when that happens, everybody's offering looks very general. But this is the same in the legal industry. It's the same in lots of other industries. And what's important is each of these operators to understand what's special about them and how can they stand apart from their competition and how can they stand above their competition, because each of them have their own uniqueness that they can differentiate themselves.
We actually, as we entered COVID-19, developed what we call a broker support program.
Yeah.
And a part of that program is a whole lot of physical social media collateral and assets that they can use, which is all around reminding to your clients, your database, if you've got a problem, call your broker. And it was called Call Your Broker campaign.
Fantastic.
Together with a strategic marketing plan for people if they didn't have one, that they then had a professional document to guide them how to properly use their opportunities and their unique service value proposition into the marketplace, and a series of videos and blogs and all sorts of things. They can get all free of charge. And then next week, I developed at the beginning of this, and it will stay with us as we come out the end, whether it's weekly or not, but I do a weekly session called Q&A with Whitey. Well, that's me, Peter White. So Q&A with Whitey, and it's answering questions, and we have guests on, similar sort of thing we're doing at the moment, and have conversations. When you get things like we're in at the moment as COVID-19, even if you may know it, it sometimes just doesn't come to front of mind. So we just try to make things easy for people.
I'm so happy you're doing these initiatives, because so that's one area I've seen. And the other area is a lot of operators in your industry, they depend on word of mouth marketing, right? And they struggle winning new customers through other means. And even with word of mouth marketing, you can systematize that. And there are multiple ways of doing this stuff. And digital is such a powerful tool if used correctly, right? Those are two areas I immediately see through the understanding we've had in a very short time dealing with some of the members in the FBAA, right? And I think those can be addressed adequately, and that's a knowledge matter. When they get the right knowledge and the right strategies, it's, what we've seen with small business owners is they understand the industry. So it's like a switch that goes on, the knowledge, the strategies, and the tools of empowerment. And suddenly that's when the magic happens. My next question is, Peter, it's very simple. What's your vision for your industry moving forward?
I guess that I'll look at it this way. I do presentations almost every other day to our industry. And I keep telling them the same thing, and that is keep focused on what your journey is. Be aware of what's going on around you, but keep focused on your journey and where you're going. And even if it's not where you thought you're going, I started my career as a kid thinking I was going to be a commercial pilot flying planes. I could fly a plane at the age of 16 before I could drive a car. Didn't ever expect this is where my journey would land. But it's important to keep focused on your journey and keep pushing those boundaries. I tell everybody in the industry that's what you need to focus on. You'll get all this noise around you. Be aware of it, but don't get distracted by it. And remember, no one said it was going to be easy, just that it'd be worthwhile. And I think that we're all in business because we put in enormously hard yards, but
Yes.
it's also enormously rewarding, especially when we get it right.
I think some words of wisdom there, nobody said it was going to be easy, but it's going to be enormously rewarding. I think that's fabulous. Some real pieces of gold there, Peter. I'm going to now get into a series of questions because I want my audience and I want your membership who watches this to know a little bit more about you. I hope that's okay.
That'll be fine. I'll see how we go.
I'm going to ask you 10 questions. You don't have much time. You need to give them to me as fast as you can, okay? Your favorite person?
Hugh Jackman.
Fantastic. Favorite city?
New York.
Best movie?
Oh, best movie. Oh, see, I'm a Marvels fan, so I'll say the Thor series.
Fantastic. The most memorable moment?
I guess it sounds a bit last year I was awarded an Order of Australia, an AM. That is probably my career's most memorable moment.
Fantastic, and congratulations. I can't tell you how proud I am to hear that. So thank you, and well done, really well done. The song you loved most?
I'm not a big one on music. Yeah, that one's a difficult one. I'd probably spend 5 minutes trying to think of that one. Well, actually, it has already. It's probably Father and Son by Cat Stevens. For some reason, that song just keeps coming back to me.
There you go, showing your age there with that answer. Biggest achievement? I know you said the Order of Australia was a big achievement. Is there anything else?
I think our progress to where we are today, we're talking about mental health in our industry. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, no one would talk about it. So I stepped up to the plate and did, and took it to the market. And in every presentation I still do today, I talk about mental health and wellness. I have my own charity around supporting parents and carers of special needs kids. We're supporting the parents with their mental health. To me, it's such an important conversation. So that's probably another.
Fantastic, Peter, and thank you. I really love that stuff, what you're doing, and keep at it. Congratulations. 3 things you love.
I love being told straight. I like things being kept short and simple. I must admit, this is a COVID experience because I spent so much time traveling. I love being at home with my family. I'm away all the time. I take over 220 domestic flights a year. I'm constantly in a hotel room to the point I've got to have a little crack open in the window so when I wake up, I can orientate myself. So I'm enjoying being at home. I have to see what I can do to make sure that's more commonplace.
Yeah, I hope so too. That's something very important. Best advice you can give a loved one?
I guess realize that life will throw you many challenges. It's a matter of how you deal with those challenges, and always fall forward. You're going to make mistakes. Things aren't always going to work out, but as long as you take a step forward and keep progressing and try not to make the same mistakes again, life will work out. Keep on that journey.
Peter, thank you. Some really wise words of wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing with us Disruption and Netstripes communities. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you as part of our distinguished audience at this Futurise series of interviews. We've had some really amazing guests. I have enjoyed your insights and your honesty during this interview. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been my absolute pleasure. It's been great. Thank you for having us on.